The original Yogyakarta Principles did not put a lot of emphasis on intersex issues. There were principles that did specify that people could not be subjected to medical procedures without their consent, and certainly that's a concern for intersex people, particularly babies. And there were principles that talked about the ability to change one's gender. Now, intersex is not a separate gender, and most intersex people identify with the sex they were assigned at birth. But for those that do want to change their gender according to their own gender identity, the principles did provide for that. It's in the update in 2017 that we find a much greater emphasis on intersex issues. The preamble for the update recognizes that sex characteristics are one of the reasons that governments may discriminate against people. Now, each of us has several dozen things about our body that could be considered sex characteristics. Sex characteristics are characteristics that correspond to the expectation of being male or female. They may be about the shape of one's musculature, the skeleton system, the shape of your genitals, your chromosomes, your hormones, all these systems in the body that correspond to the expectations of being male or female. Intersex people experience sex characteristics that sometimes don't match with the expectation of the sex that they were assigned at birth or the expectations of their gender identity as it's felt by them. And so this is where, a person may have hormones or chromosomes that correspond to one sex, but their other sex characteristics, the body and the musculature, corresponds to another. So intersex people are discriminated against. They face stigma, and they also face a medical establishment which is often ready to perform surgery at the time that they're infants without their consent, and sometimes the surgery is irreversible and permanent and quite damaging. So the principles in the preamble add sex characteristics to that list of characteristics that may trigger discrimination. Now, it does not say intersex people have specific rights. It says intersex people have human rights, the same rights that everybody else has, which is a feature of all the principles. But there are specific principles that deal with intersex issues. One is Principle 32, the right to bodily and mental integrity. And this says everyone has the freedom to be free from cruel, inhumane, and degrading treatment or punishment on the basis of sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. No one shall be subjected to invasive or irreversible medical procedures that modify sex characteristics without their free, prior, and informed consent, unless necessary to avoid serious, urgent, and irreparable harm to the concerned person. The real concern here is about babies and pre-adolescents, where oftentimes surgery is performed without telling the baby or the adolescent what the surgery is for. So there are specific recommendations that apply to children and require getting the consent of children according to their evolving capacity to consent. It also says that the principles say that everybody has the right to truth. That is, everybody has the right to the knowledge of what has happened to their body, even at the young age where they were not able to participate in a conversation about consent or understand it. And this right to truth is a right that is one that is held by each of us, but it's also an obligation on the state just to be able to have mechanisms available to make sure intersex people know what may have been done to them as a baby or as a child. I think these two rights, as well as the rights of simple non-discrimination and all the other human rights that we all have, are some of the most important things that the YP+10 update says about intersex people. And I think these principles will be enormously helpful to governments and activists going forward to understand the human rights of intersex people.